Senator Annie Hoey.
Thank you. You might consider giving me the same latitude. Oh, yoo-hoo. Thank you so much, Karen Corla, and thank you to the Green Party. I want to commend my colleagues for bringing this issue to the Chamber during their private members today. There are a significant number of issues in this motion that I feel very strongly about, and I would like to speak to, as I have in my past 2 years in this Chamber: the treatment of animals in the racing sector, the need to better fund our animal welfare organisations, the care and standard in need of improvement in our agri-food sector. And while this motion is extremely comprehensive, I did notice that there is a gap in one area of animal welfare matters in Ireland. The motion does not mention the 7 zoos or wildlife parks that we have in this country, which are responsible for the care and preservation of rare and endangered animals, and we assume they are a guaranteed safe space for animals. However, it has been my great misfortune over the past couple of months to learn that that is not so, and that is not always a guarantee. The motion brought forward today discusses that animals are entitled to the widely acknowledged 5 freedoms reflected in the Convention: freedom from hunger and thirst, discomfort, pain, injury and disease, to express normal behaviour, and fear from freedom and distress. And I'm going to outline some concerning breaches of these freedoms. A number of months ago, I began a series of meetings with both former and current staff members in Dublin Zoo. Through this engagement, I've been made aware of a number of breaches of these freedoms for animals in Dublin Zoo, the most detailed accounts of which have recently been issued to me by a whistleblower via protected disclosure. Regarding the animal welfare management failings in Dublin Zoo, I've been told by the whistleblower that there's been serious welfare issues, near misses, safety and management concerns at Dublin Zoo. Because I have exhausted all options with Dublin Zoo grievance procedures which failed to act on my concerns, I feel I have no option but to expose my experiences of what I have witnessed in the zoo. In the motion before us today, there is reference to animals' rights freedom from pain, injury and disease. And I want to tell you about Kildare, a zebra who was not free from that freedom. The female zebra, Kildare, died after complications during a tooth extraction procedure on the 2nd of the 12th, 2020. She was darted twice and suffered from capsular myopathy. She was kept alive even though staff requested the animal be euthanised. The tooth was extracted and the animal was severely paralysed when she came around from the anaesthetic. The animal was left to recover overnight. After no change, the animal was going to be hung overnight in a harness, even though she was severely paralysed. One staff member pleaded at the end of the 2nd day to end the animal's suffering. Management and veterinary team were planning to leave her hanging in the harness overnight, despite being severely paralysed. Staff were extremely distraught after witnessing the zebra's treatment, and they felt they could not raise concerns for fear of reprisals. Kildare was featured on the Zoo TV series on the 26th of the 6th, 2022. In the motion before us today, there is reference to animals' freedom from pain, injury and disease. And I want to tell you about Maeve the giraffe, who died only last month. Staff were informed at a meeting by a team leader in March that Maeve was on watch, meaning that she'd be on quality of life assessment. Maeve has not been observed consistently or been assessed to determine her quality of life, and there was no quality of life assessment filled out from March until her death on the 28th of 6th, 2022, where staff had to watch her lay and slowly die while kicking out trying to gain her footing. This should never have happened to Maeve or her keepers. After her death and post-mortem, staff were called to a meeting and offered counselling, and then told to delete any videos of Maeve and how she died. And this is another attempt by Dublin Zoo to intimidate and conceal the wrongdoing and animal welfare problems. And before Maeve's death, I saw photos of her gaunt frame and her bones sticking out, and she was clearly an extremely unwell animal. In the motion before us today, there is reference to animals' right to freedom from pain, injury and disease. And I want to tell you about Harry, the silverback gorilla. And I think we all know about Harry, as he was one of the most famous attractions in the zoo all throughout my childhood and into recent times. Harry was a silverback male gorilla that died on the 29th of 5th, 2016. Keepers consistently raised concerns leading up to his death. It is reported daily reports that his behaviour was abnormal, he was losing weight and his condition. Keepers repeatedly asked for a vet to examine him, and eventually a vet was called and he died shortly after. This has had an adverse effect on the rest of the troop. This is one of the hardest stories for me to hear from the many staff I spoke to, as the pain in their voice over how Harry was treated in the run-up to his death was unbearable. And I sanitise the details here, as I don't think I could read all of them out. But I saw the photos of Harry at the end, and he suffered greatly. I have seen footage and photographs of the animals I've mentioned here today, and the visible and necessary suffering they were left to endure is unfathomable. And Tom McCree, Brista. This is not what care and compassion for animals is supposed to look like. This is not the standard of care which we as members of the public and of the Parliament have come to expect from Dublin Zoo, a much trusted and beloved public institute. However, the pain of sick and dying animals are not the only animal welfare issues that were detailed to me in the protected disclosure and from the former and current staff I have spoken to. There is a major breach of guidelines happening in the form of missing animals. In the motion before us today, there is reference to animals' freedom from fear and distress. In November 2019, 2 crested macaws went missing and were presumed dead. In February and March of this year, a white-collared mangabey went missing, also presumed dead. Despite staff raising the issue of them not being found, management have not looked thoroughly for these animals or raised the public's awareness in the event the member of the public were to encounter it. Staff raised their concerns of the 2 missing macaws, saying there were 24, but now there are only 22 in the group. The team leader quotes the creator saying, "But there was always 22," insisting that the keepers could not count to 24. A Crichton-crested cockatoo escaped on the 21st of 5th of 2022 from its aviary. This is a critically endangered species, and since its escape, there have been no efforts to locate the animal or raise the public's awareness if they were to see such a bird in the hope of being able to return it to the zoo. The zoo has failed to follow any protocols to either retrieve the animals or inform or warn the public to either retrieve the animal or to prevent anyone sustaining an injury from one of the missing animals. And I'm nearly done. What I've raised today is only a snapshot of the stories which have been shared to me about the failings in animal welfare in Dublin Zoo. I have pages and pages and pages of testimony from both current and former staff, and I was on the phone until very, very late last night hearing more stories that I don't have time to go through today. These events are not in the far past, they are also happening quite recently. I've outlined some very recent breaches. I want to thank all of those who have taken the time to speak with me and inform me of these issues over the past number of months, and I particularly want to commend the whistleblower who had the bravery to come forward with their protected disclosure to me and trusting me to help share a light on these most serious breaches of animal welfare in Dublin Zoo. These are people who have come forward, who care deeply for the animals they care for, and who have put themselves in the firing line and work to raise these concerns. And it is a pity that their voices, the only one the animals in their care have fallen on deaf ears. In closing, I feel it's only appropriate to quote the whistleblower once again when they say, "I have exhausted all of my options to date, and I can't in good conscience wait till my serious misgivings result in the death of a colleague and, as is already happening, the unnecessary deaths and mishandling of endangered animal species within Dublin Zoo." So I want to thank the Greens for bringing this motion forward, and I hope I've raised a light or shone a light on something that is extraordinarily serious, and I will be engaging with the relevant minister, the relevant department and the relevant committees in the days coming forward on behalf of the whistleblower on this issue, but I wanted to tell it here first.